guys, we're gonna talk about square roots. Marshall, will you hit the lights? Waylon, will you come up and sit in the desk for me, please, sir? Yeah, you can come up and sit in the desk so you can see a little better. Will you hit one of the lights?
Which one?
Doesn't matter, just one of them. Will you close the door too, please? Yeah, that's better. Thanks. Okay, so when we're talking about square roots, what we're really doing, yes, sir. Sure, yeah, it's on my desk. In the blue coffee cup.
Square root of 85,000 is what?
So if we're talking about square roots, what we're really finding is we're finding pairs of numbers, right? So when we have the square root of 4, we just have the square root of 4 is 2, because it's asking us what number pairs together to make 4. So when I have a square root, this little guy is called a radical, and the dude who lives inside here is called a radicand. Okay? Or radicand. C-A-N-D, sorry. Radicand. So when I'm doing square roots, I can start with something as simple as the square root of 4. And all the square root is asking for is what pair of numbers are multiplied together to give me 4. So it's 2, because I have two 2's multiplied together. So I have 2 times 2. So the square root of 4 is just 2. Okay? So if I have the square root of 9, what two numbers multiply together to make 9? 3. Yeah, so 3 times 3 is 9. So the square root of 9 equals 3. Okay? So you can go through this and we can go the square root of 81, which is what? 9. Yeah, because 9 times 9 equals 81. Square root of 81 equals 9. Okay? So as far as basic square roots go, is everybody tracking with me? We all got that down?
So the inside it is a radicand. What's a radical?
The house.
Okay.
So when we're doing these, we can actually do them for numbers that are perfect squares. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, and on and on and on and on. So we can find perfect squares and we just get a number out of them, right? So if I say the square root of 64, we just say that answer is 8, right? So what happens is we've got these numbers that are between the perfect squares that actually don't make
I get why you did that, but I wouldn't know.
yeah. So they don't make perfect perfect square numbers. Like, what if I ask you for the square root of 12? You can stick that in the calculator, and it's going to give you a decimal number. It's going to give you a great big long decimals. But we need something that we can actually talk about, something that we can all agree on in a language where we don't have to say, okay, this is going to be, the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4, so it's going to be 3.147829643258. So it's going to be this great big number. So instead of saying the square root of 12 is 3 point some really, really long decimal number, what we can do is we can take the squares out of 12 and we can break it into smaller pieces, okay? So one of the rules of square roots is I can take the factors of 12. So what are my factors of 12? 1 times 12, right? 2 times 6.
3 times 4.
3 times 4. And what we want to do is we want to look for perfect squares. 1 and 12, that's no use to us. We don't ever want to use the 1 because we just end up factoring 12 again, okay? So 2 and 6, are there any perfect squares in there? 2 is not a perfect square, 6 is not a perfect square. What about 3 and 4? Do I have any perfect squares in there?
4.
I have 4, so here's what I can do. You can take this, and we can say this is the square root of 3 times 4, okay? The square root of 3 times 4. So whenever we have the square root of 3 times 4, we can actually take the pieces that are inside. When they're multiplied together, anything that's multiplied inside the house, we can break it into pieces, and I can say this is the square root of 3 times the square root of 4, okay? So I can break that into pieces. 3, is 3 a perfect square? No. Can we factor it down to anything other than 1 and 3? No. So there's nothing we can do with that. So we're just going to bring it down. We're going to say the square root of 3. What about 4? What's the square root of 4? 2. because there's two twos that make up a 4, so the 2 can come outside the house. So the rule is this: to come outside the house, you gotta have a date. If you don't have a date, you gotta stay inside the house. So for anything to come outside the house, you have to have a partner, okay? There's gotta be a pair. So since 4 makes a pair of 2s, the 2 can come outside the house. The 3 doesn't have a partner, so he has to stay inside the house, okay? So much like your dating life, if you're by yourself, you gotta stay inside the house, okay?
Both of them go.
Great question, Marshall. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Alright, so I say the square root of 12. And I can do that with pretty much any number. I can say, what's the square root of 56? So what are my factors of 56?
1 and 56.
1 and 56, 2 and 28,
4,
4 and 14,
6 maybe.
And then 7 times 8.
I'm stupid.
That's okay. So do we have any perfect squares in there?
I think 4.
Hmm?
Which one, the first one?
1 or 56 is not. 2 or 28, are there any perfect squares in there? No. What about 4 and 14? Do we have any perfect squares? Okay. So we're going to say the square root of 4 times 14. And then we're going to say the square root of 4 times the square root of 14. So what's the square root of 4? 2. Yeah, so there's 2 2s, so they can come outside the house. What about the square root of 14? Do I have any square factors of 14? I've got 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. So no squares can come out of there. I don't have any more partners. So I can say 2 square roots of 14. That's my answer. Everybody tracking with me so far? Questions on that? Gotta have a partner to come out of the house, okay? Gotta have a partner to come out of the house. So we can do it with numbers. What about variables? Can we take a look at radicals and variables? If I have the square root of x squared, what's my answer?
X squared.
Yeah, no, it's not x squared.
X.
It's just x, right? Because what I'm looking for is pairs. So what I'm looking for is the square root of x times x. How many pairs do I have? 1 pair. So I have x to the first power. All right? So however many pairs you have, that's going to be your exponent, okay? So you can take your exponent here and divide it by 2, and that's what you're going to get as far as what goes outside the box, okay? So if I have x to the 8th, how many pairs do I have in x to the 8th? How many pairs of x's?
8.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many pairs of those do I have? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just take my 8, divide it by 2. I get 4 pairs. So I have x to the 4th is my answer, okay? X to the 4th is my answer.
So if it's x squared, you take x and put an x times x.
You don't have to. You just need to memorize this rule. I'm just explaining how it works. When you have x squared, you divide the 2 by 2, and you get x to the 1st, which is the same as just regular old x, okay? When you have x to the 8th, you divide the 8 by 2, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of x's, so you have x to the 4th power. That's your answer, x to the 4th power. Yeah, whatever your exponent is, you divide it by 2, and that's your new exponent,
What if
okay?
it's off?
That's a great question. What if it is an odd exponent?
So anytime it's an even exponent, you take it and divide it by 2.
You divide it by 2, that's your new exponent. So what if I have the square root of x to the 7th? Okay? So I have x times x times x times x times x times x times I have the square root of that. You have to have a partner to come out of the house, right? So we're looking for couples.
We have 3 of them.
We got 1, we got 2, we got 3. okay? How many times, if we divide 7 by 2, what do we get?
14.
No, we get 3.5.
Divide, I
Okay.
forgot, never mind.
We can't do anything with a half a couple, so we cross that out. This becomes our exponent that comes outside. So what comes outside is x to the third, okay? Because I have 3 couples. 1, 2, 3 couples. Now this guy right here is sad and lonely. He does not have a date. So he has to stay inside the house. So what our answer is x to the third times the square root of x, okay? Because there's no square root of just x by itself. Because you got to have a partner to come out of the house, okay? If you got a partner, you can go out. If you don't have a partner, you got to stay in the house, okay? So if we have,
I do two of them. One is like A6 and B10 and
I have a plan. I've done this before. So if I have x to the 13th, and I'm finding the square root of it, what's 13 divided by 2? 6, right? 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. So I turn my 0.5 away because we can't take half a couple. So I have x to the 6th power, and then the lonely guy has to stay inside the house by himself. Okay? So it's going to be x to the 6th times the square root of x. Everybody with me so far on this? Okay. You guess or you have a
I
question?
can't really see because they're in the way.
Yes, I can't be transparent.
Oh, I know.
You might move over here.
I thought someone was sitting there because I was back there. Do you mind?
So, what we're going to start seeing is we're going to start seeing some combinations. We might see 24 x to the 6th. We're going to find the square root. You remember we said we could break this stuff apart? So I have the square root of 24 times the square root of x to the 6th. Okay? What's the square root of x to the 6th? How many partners do I have there? That's going to be x to the third. Now, what about the square root of 24? What are my factors of 24?
1 and 24, 2,
2 and 12,
3 and 8,
4 and 6. Any of those have a square in it?
yeah.
Which one? Square root of 4 times 6. So we have the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. What's the square root of 4? 2, and then x to the third came outside the house, right? And then we have the square root of 6 left inside the house. Okay, so our answer becomes 2 from here. Our x to the third comes down because it's outside the house. And then our 6, we don't have any partners in there. We've got a 3 and a 2, but we don't have any partners. So the 6 has to stay inside the house. Okay?
And then you're gonna have to pay for it.
No. Okay. So let's look at some of the problems on your worksheet.
Number one's a doozy.
Number 1 is a doozy. What's the square root of 4?
2.
2. 5 points. Boom, right there.
Yeah.
Number 9.
Wait, hold on.
Number 9.
Oh,
What's number 2?
4.
Square root of 16 is 4. Boom, 5 points right there.
where you at?
Whoa,
On the
what?
back of the first page, homie.
What's that? Oh. Sorry.
Okay, so number 3 is negative square root of 100.
No.
So we'll just put 2 and 4.
What's the square root of 100?
10.
Yeah, it's 10, right?
Wow.
So we bring our 10 down. The 10 comes out of the house because it has a partner. What about our negative?
I don't know.
It doesn't have a partner.
All we do is just bring it down because it's not inside a it's not inside a radical, okay? So our answer is just negative 10 because the negative's on the outside of the radical. So the square root of 100 is 10, and if we make that negative, it's negative 10, right?
But what if we're in the square root of negative 100? Like the one, like
Can't take the
negative-
square root of a negative number.
Well.
Okay, so if you have negative 3 times negative 3, what do you have? Positive 9, right? So how could you get a negative number? Only by multiplying a negative and a positive. So you can't have a square root of a negative number. Make sense? Alright, so number 4, the square root of a to the 8th.
It would be.
How many pairs do I have in there?
4.
I've got 4 pairs, right? Do I have any leftovers?
No.
Nope, so it's just gonna be a to the 4th power. What about the square root of w to the 12th?
You have 6 pairs and they're even, so it'd just be w to the 6.
Yeah, so I have 6 pairs, so I have w to the 6th power. Okay, good on that?
Yep.
Okay, so moving into the next questions, we start putting some stuff together, okay? So I have the square root of a to the 6th, b to the 10th. Remember, when two things are multiplied together, that we can break these things apart, okay? We can break them apart, and if they're multiplied together, we can also smush them back together. So let's do this. The square root of a to the 6th times the square root of b to the 10th. What's the square root of a to the 6th? Yeah, it's a to the 3rd. We divide that 6 by 2, we get a to the 3rd as our new exponent. What's our square root of b to the 10th? B to the 5th. It gets to come out of the house. We don't need any more radicals. This is our answer right here. A to the 3rd, b to the 5th. So if we can do it with variables, we should be able to do it with numbers, right? So if I have 9a squared, take the square root of that, I've got the square root of 9 times the square root of a squared. What's the square root of 9?
3a1.
3, and then I just have a to the 1st power, and I don't need a 1st power. It's just a. Because a to the 1st power, Brandon said a to the 1st power, which is true. It is a to the 1st power, but we don't have to write that. We just write it as 3a. Okay? All right, what about negative on the outside? Square root of 81 m to the 64th. Okay, this is tricky.
Negative 9 to, and then.
Square root of 81 is 9.
9 and 32.
And then we divide that by 2. Good job, Brandon. So the square root of m to the 64th is not m to the 8th. It's m to the 32nd power. And then we just bring our negative down since it's on the outside. Okay?
9m to the 32nd.
Negative 9m to the 32nd power. Square root of 49, a to the 4th, b to the 12th.
7, 8.
You guys want to break it? You want to break it down, or you just want to do it?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's just do it. What's the square root of 49?
7a2 b6.
7. Brandon says the square root of a to the 4th is a squared. And he says b to the 12th, the square root of that is b to the 6th. Everything comes out of the bracket. I don't have any leftovers, do I? Everybody's got a partner. No lonely folks. All right. What about 121
12x 7y3.
x to the 14th y to the 6th? Not 12.
It's 11. 12 times 12 140. Oh my.
So, the square root of 121 is 11. The square root of 14,
7.
x to the 7th. Yes, we just divide 14 by 2, we get x to the 7th. And then y to the 6th? Y to the 3rd. So
11x to the 7th and y to the 3rd.
yes, 11x to the 7th, y to the 3rd, Marco. Very good.
Oh man, this math's so hard.
Number 11, square root of 18. So we got to start thinking a little bit.
Oh wait, never
Don't
mind.
have any perfect squares that are just the only thing in there. Let's talk about the square root of 18. What are my factors of 18?
1 and 18.
Okay, so we never are going to actually do the 1 and 18 because then I have to factor 18 again, and I say,
Okay, then
so
2 and 9.
So yeah, our next step is 2 and 9. So we're going to say the square root of 2 times 9, which is the square root of 2 times the square root of 9. What's the square root of 2? Are there any partners in there?
No.
Nope. That stays in the house because there's no partners. What about the square root of 9?
Yep.
3.
3's are partners, aren't they? So our answer ends up being 3 square roots of 2. So let's look at this. If I have the square root of 18, what if I picked a different set of factors? What if I picked
4.
the square root of 6 times 3? Okay? So the square root of 6 times 3, 6 can be factored out. So what I have here is I have the square root of 6 times the square root of 3. And here I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Okay? What's the square root of 3 times itself? What's the square root of 3 squared?
Three square root.
No, no, no. What's the square root of 3 times the square root of 3?
Wouldn't it be 3?
It's just 3. Okay? So look what's left. I multiply these two things together and I just get 3. And then, can I do anything with this square root of 2? Bring it down. 3 square roots of 2. So no matter what factors you choose, you should be able to come up with the right answer, okay? So you could pick 2 and 9, which makes it pretty easy. Or you can pick 6 and 3, which doesn't make it wrong, you just have one extra step in there, okay? As a general rule of thumb, if you can pick something that has a perfect square in it, it's going to work out better for you, okay? But you can pick any set of factors for a number and it should work out. So what's the square root of 125? Yeah, it's not an even square, so we're gonna have to figure out what the factors are. What can I multiply together to get 125? 25 and 5, that's great because it's got a square in it. So I have the square root of 25 times 5. So I've got the square root of 25 times the square root of 5. What's the square root of 25? 5, because we have 2 of those, so they can come out. Are there any squares in here?
No.
That's got to stay in the house because it doesn't have any partners. So your answer is 5 square roots of 5. Everybody see how we got it? 12:30, like 12:35. Let's see here. Square root of 72. 8 times 9, that's a great one. So I've got the square root of 8 times 9. So I've got the square root of 8 times the square root of 9.
Square root of 8.
So can we break 8
4.
down? Yeah, we can say 8 is the square root of 4 times 2. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. And what's the square root of 9? 3. We can just bring that down.
8
So what's the
even
square root of
square.
4? Square root of 4 is 2. So if I've got 2 times 3 times the square root of 2. What's 2 times 3? I bring down my square root of 2, 6 square roots of 2. Okay?
Wait a second. How come you could bring down, I don't know, why'd you factor out 8? Oh, you're not actually, I guess.
So we could have done this with different factors. We could have done this like this. Square root of 72 is 36 times 2. So the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. What's the square root of 36? 6. And the square root of 2, nothing you can do to it. We end up getting the same thing. The bigger the square you can find, the easier the problem is going to be. But no matter what you pick, as long as you pick the correct factors, whether it's 36 and 2 or whether it's 8 and 9, you're going to get the same answer. Okay? 36, the square root of 36 is 6, the square root of
Okay.
2 is 2. So let's look at the square root of 180.
You can do 10 times 18.
Okay, we can do 10 times 18. We can do 9 times 20. We can do 36 times 5. Which one do you want to do? 36 times 5. So if I do this, it's the square root of 36 times the square root of 5. What do I get? 6 comes outside. Square root of 5 has to stay in the house by itself. Six square roots of 5. Is this making sense to everybody so far? Okay. Should be pretty simple. You just always want to look for partners, okay? Always look for perfect squares. So let's look at the square root of a cubed. What's 3 divided by 2?
Oh, wait.
3 divided by 2. It's 1.5, Mary says. So how many whole numbers do I have? Just one, right? So I have A. How many leftovers do I have?
Well,
I have one pair.
One.
I have one pair, and what's left over? One guy. One lonely guy has to stay in the house by himself. Okay?
I was gonna say 3 halves, and I thought I'd be silly, but I guess it's the same thing.
So if I have b to the 7th, and I take the square root of that, yeah, I'm gonna get 3.5 when I divide by 2. So I take my whole number, that's gonna be my exponent, so b to the 3rd, that's how many partners I have, that's how many pairs, and then I'm gonna have one guy left over. This half a pair is always gonna be the one guy who's left over lonely by himself, staying at home, because he has no date.
Hold on.
Okay? What about m to the 9th? Square root of m to the 9th. How many pairs do I have? 4 pairs. So I have m to the 4th. What's left?
I have 4.
One guy.
4.5.
Because we make a pair,
Yeah.
so there, if there's 9, that means there's like 8 M's, and that's 4
Oh.
M's. Plus 1 left.
And then one guy left over
Oh, okay.
who has to stay at home by himself. Alright, so on to something with a little bit of meat to it. Square root of 75 x to the 7th y to the 5th. So we can break it up. Square root of 75 square root of x to the 7th square root of y to the 5th.
Huh? Where we at?
Okay. What are my factors of 75?
Use 5 and 5.
Do we have anything that has a perfect square in it?
3 and 5.
3 times 25. 5 and 15 will work, Brandon, but 3 times 25 gives us a perfect square. So we have the square root of 3 times the square root of 25. What's the square root of x to the 7th? X to the 3rd comes out. What's left? One guy in the house, right? So we have the square root of x. What's the square root of y to the 5th?
Y2 is 1
So y squared comes out, and then we have the square root with y on the inside.
Dividing it by 2.
Yep, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So we've got the 2 in there, and the 0.5 is the one guy by himself.
I'm lost.
Cause we're looking for pairs, so we have 2 pairs and we have 1 lonely guy who stays inside the house. Okay, so we've got all this stuff here. What's the square root of 25?
5.
Okay, so we have, you guys remember how we can take this apart? You see how we can break it apart and we can make it different square roots? We can also put it all back together, okay? So what's on the outside? My 5 is, my x cubed is on the outside, my y squared is on the outside, right? What's on the inside? 3x and y. This is your answer right here. Okay? All your stuff on the outside, you can put it together. All your stuff on the inside, you can put it together.
Okay, well,
Let's do number 19. 27, a to the 11th, b to the 7th. Take the square root of it. What are my factors of 27? What's something that has a perfect square in it? 9 times 3. Square root of 9 times the square root of 3. What's the square root of a to the 11th? And then b to the 7th.
times a to the 11.
So the square root of 9 is 3, right? What's the square root of 3? Doesn't he have to live in the house? He doesn't get to come outside, right? There's nobody else with him. That's 3. The only 2 things in there are 1 and 3. So there's no partners. They gotta stay at home. 3 goes inside the house. What about a to the 11th? What can come out? A to the 5th can come out because 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. So I've got my 5 that comes out, but I've got 1 guy left over there, don't I? He has to stay on the inside. What about b to the 7th? What can come out? B to the 3rd can come out. What has to go on the inside? There's 1 b left. Everybody see it so far?
A, B are in the house.
Because when you have a to the 11th, we take 5 pairs out and there's 1 guy left over that stays inside the house.
Oh. Same thing with 7.
Yeah, because we take 3 pairs out, which is 6 that go away. 6 of them come out here because it's 3 pairs of B's. And then we got 1 B left. He has to stay in the house by himself because he doesn't have a date. Okay? Last one, 32, a to the 7th, b to the 4th. What can I factor 32 out to? What's that? I want the biggest square I can think of. 8 and 4, but those both have a square inside them. Is there a number that's a little bit bigger? What if I divide it by 2? 16 and 2? Any of those a square? Alright, so let's do that. We've got the square root of 16 times 2. We've got the square root of a to the 7th. And the square root of b to the 4th. What's the square root of 16? 4. So that gets to come out. What stays on the inside? 2. What comes out of the a to the 7th? 3. A to the 3rd comes out, right. What stays inside?
1.
1 guy left over. What about b to the 4th?
2 get to come out.
B squared, yeah. Is there anybody left over?
No.
Nope. No, nobody's left at home. So look here. I take my outside stuff. 4, a cubed, b squared. Thanks. And what's left on the inside? I got a 2 and an a left on the inside. And that's your answer.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna calculate it out.
If you need some help with that, come see me in 212. I want you to finish this out for homework, basically. You should have plenty of time to finish it up.
I was just gonna real quick, 'cause we